when your father has been working so hard for 40 years, for 4 decades, he sacrificed everything to entertain people and been so loved. I mean, obviously, as children in any aspect of life, you will gain for the good things that your parents did, and you will pay for the mistakes that they made. I mean, I think that stands true in every sphere of life. My whole philosophy is that if I'm not here to do films that actors have been doing for the past 30 or 40 years and repackage them, I want to do films that people are going to be talking about for a long time. And it doesn't matter if that's 1,000 people only talking about them. I'd rather my films impact a smaller audience than just trying to reach wider.
Hello everyone, welcome to PeepingMoon.com. I'm Rashita Sahani and today I'm very pleased to be chatting with Varrdhan Kapoor, who impressed us recently with his role in AK versus AK. Hi Harsh, welcome to Peeping Moon. How have you been?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me. And I read all the reviews, so I must thank you guys for such a good positive review and for mentioning me.
Yeah, you're most welcome. So firstly, tell me Harsh, as we all saw in AK versus AK, your role was this, really short one, but it also left an impact. Like when I watched it, I actually mentioned you in the review and I said that you came as a surprise package in it. So when
Right,
you read
right.
comments like that and messages like that, did you expect it while you were shooting for the film?
No, not at all. Because like you said, the screen time of the role isn't much. And but when I kind of did read it on the page,
Hmm.
even though obviously the characters in the film briefly, the scene, the one monologue scene itself is like a 6-7 page long scene. Where basically, there's that it's a performance that he's putting on for Anurag's character, and it's a very unique scene. You don't generally read scenes like that or see scenes like that in films. Where and when I read it on the page, it almost kind of felt surreal. This guy is so crazy that he's going on and putting on this performance in this very tense atmosphere. So I kind of had to work really hard on the scene, to tell you the truth, because monologues are never easy. And comedy isn't easy, and then kind of being in the room with these two towering personalities, so I had to work really hard on the scene.
Okay. And also, as you mentioned in the film, I know it was a part of the film, but you said that Anurag, I want to do a film with you, and I have this, thing, a topic in my mind, and all of that. So, is that actually happening?
No, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, Anurag is it's kind of interesting because I've, in a way, worked with him in three
Yeah.
films. It's like, so Bhavesh Joshi, he was the co-writer and the producer. Then in AK versus AK, he was kind of my co-actor and
Yeah.
also wrote some of the dialogues in the film. And I'm shooting for a film actually right now
Mm.
that where he's kind of written the script.
Yeah.
So this is the film that I'm shooting now is actually in a way my third film that I'm doing that Anurag is a part of in some way. So
Yeah.
I've done films that he's written many times, but obviously never worked with him as a director, and I hope it happens at some point.
Okay. And recently, of course, we saw a lot of pictures of, Anil sir and Fatima, and even yours from the shoot of Thar. So, how was that?
Yeah, it's going well. Been here since the 28th of December. So it's been a long sked, and the
Mm.
last day for me here is the 22nd of Feb. After which, like 95% of the film is complete. Most of the film is complete. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay. And any update on your biopic, the Abhinav Bindra one?
Yeah, that will be shooting this year in the winter.
Oh, that's great. Also,
Yeah.
Harsh, with the web space growing so much, especially during the pandemic, do you also plan to, venture into it full force wise with a series or a film?
Well, I've d- actually done 3 films with Netflix,
Yeah.
out of which obviously the first one was AK versus AK,
Hmm.
that released, and obviously that people really loved. I wasn't the lead, but it was my first collaboration with them.
Yeah.
Um, I've actually done another project with them, that's been directed by Vasan Bala, the director of The Man Who Feels No Pain, which we finished filming for in November 2020, and
Okay.
it'll be out in May. So I can't tell you too much more about that, but it's directed by Vasan, and I'm in it, and Radhika Madan is in it, and it's a comedy.
Yeah.
It's a dark comedy. So that's complete. Very, 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 very excited for the world to see that one. I think that'll come out sometime in May. And then obviously I've been shooting now for this film with Dad and Fatima, which I think should be out at the end of this year. And they're both Netflix projects, So I've completely dived into it. And then Bindra will be for theaters, So I
Yeah.
think that I have no vanity in the sense where I feel like my films can only release in the cinemas, and I've never really seen my career like that. I don't really, I'm not too concerned about how big my role is, or if I'm
Yeah.
the lead. I feel like an actor should kind of, at least for me, the way that I see my career is I chase passion projects. I don't really do the conventional thing of like trying
Yeah.
to climb the ladder of box office and stuff like that. So I want to work with the best directors in the country. I want to do films like AK versus AK, like Bhavesh Joshi Superhero, films that will, I think, are progressive. You
Yeah.
don't really see anything similar films in Indian films, and they kind of are progressive,
Yeah.
and they're the present and the future. My whole philosophy is that if I'm not here to do films that actors have been doing for the past 30 or 40 years and repackage them, I want to do films that people are going to be talking about for a long time. And it doesn't matter if that's 1,000 people only talking about them. I'd rather
Mm.
my films impact a smaller audience than just like trying to reach wider. Obviously I also want my films to reach wider, but I think that's completely dependent on the story of the film. So
Definitely.
like I think the Bindra biopic, hopefully, I think inherently will have more interest, so it
Yeah.
warrants a theatrical release. So I go from character to character, and so yeah, I've got these two films coming out with Netflix, and then I go back to theaters. But then if something else comes for Netflix again, or Amazon, I'd love to do it. It just depends on the script.
Okay. And what is the most important part that, the most important thing that you feel should be there in a script while selecting a project?
I think it's, for me, the template very much is, have I seen anything like this before? If
Okay.
I read something and I'm like, it's not bad, but like it's so similar to like things that I've seen growing up,
Yeah.
or that have been made, and it kind of feels like a project. I try
Mm-hmm.
and stay away from that. I like to work on films that are trying to um, uh, say something, or then for people that love films in a way, like I think AK versus AK is a film for people that really love cinema. They
Yeah.
really love films. I think Bhavesh Joshi is a film for cinephiles, but the story is very relatable. So even though the treatment is very cinematic, and the craft and grammar is obviously, Vikram is amazing. The theme of trying to be a better person and making a difference to the world is something that everybody can relate to. So I either like to do films that are really have some interesting themes, or then work with directors like Vikramaditya Motwani or Vasan Bala, who have such a unique vision,
Yeah.
and their films are basically very unique, and they're very different, so, which I really enjoy.
Okay. Yeah. And, as someone who belongs to a filmy background, how would you define your journey in the film industry as? Because there have been so many debates surrounding it that, people who belong to filmy background have it easy, but I'm sure
Mm.
everyone has their own line of struggle within. So, how do you describe your journey as?
Well, my journey is very difficult to describe because I haven't really done any of the typical filmy things.
Okay.
I haven't really done like a star, like I haven't really done like a big hero, like a kind of,
Okay.
I've just played characters in a way. Obviously started off with Mirzia, which was a very big film, but I mean, I kind of knew at the start that Mirzia was also a very experimental film in kind of its nature and storytelling. And, some people like it, some people don't. It wasn't the typical conventional star kid launch.
Definitely. Yeah.
And Bhavesh Joshi definitely wasn't the typical Star Kid follow-up, and then AK versus AK, I don't know too many other people that have done roles like that, so I think your choices kind of say a lot about you. They kind
Yeah.
of dictate who you are and what you stand for in a lot of ways. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously, when your father has been working so hard for 40 years, for 4 decades, he sacrificed everything to entertain people and been so loved. I mean, obviously, as children in any aspect of life, you will gain for the good things that your parents did, and you will pay for the mistakes that they made. I mean, I think that stands true in every sphere of life. If your father was a great doctor and you've studied medicine, and your father is also still practicing, you will also practice medicine. So I mean, I don't really know what that whole thing is. But yeah, I just kind of go from film to film. I don't really think about this whole thing too much. I don't really think about the star system too much. I just
Mhm.
want to do good roles and cool films. So
Okay.
yeah.
And as you correctly mentioned that you do not think about the star thing, star kid thing as much, but don't you think that we live in a country that is obsessed with trolling people, especially star
Mm.
kids, because they are born into a certain family and they're sort of being blamed for it. What is your opinion on that?
I mean, I think the answer lies in your question. I mean, how can you blame somebody for being born in a
Yeah.
certain? It's the silliest thing that I've ever heard. I mean, if you think about it, just as a common sense thing,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just common sense. I mean, it's. I mean, but I think the internet era and age is very new, and I think that like there are laws and there's a constitution in real life for harassing people. Like you can't, for
Yeah.
example, if you're walking on the street and you're rude and abusive and you harass somebody, you can get taken. There can be legal ramifications.
Yeah.
So I think the internet is still very new and there's a lot of money involved with the internet. But
Mhm.
eventually, there will be a constitution for the internet. You
Yeah.
will not be able to abuse people and say nasty things. I mean, it's pretty apparent. And now that, especially after the pandemic, we live most of our lives on the web.
Yeah.
So if that's the environment that you live in and work in, why should you be abused and harassed on it? I mean, shouldn't that be have legal ramifications? And I
Yeah.
think people are already talking about it. They're talking about punishing racists on the
Mhm.
internet, and they're talking about punishing people that are abusive. And I think it's a matter of time. And I mean, I just feel like a lot of the trolls and stuff. It's, you have to also take a moment and think what their lives must be like. You know,
Yeah.
can you imagine what somebody's life must be like if every day the goal of their day is to log on to their
Yeah.
computer, go on somebody's page that they have no idea about, and just say nasty things? I mean, they must have such miserable lives.
Yeah.
And I genuinely, I feel so bad for them. Because they might not have the opportunities. They might not have the chances that we've kind of had to. But then again, you have to make the most of your life, and you have to be a positive, try and be a positive person, and be you know you people should want to be around you. So I wouldn't recommend hate or spreading hate, and I think it's pretty ridiculous and non-constructive.
Okay.
Mm.
And also, do you think the kind of, the kind of scenario that we are currently in, the constant comparisons of actors from, with their contemporaries has increased,
Mm.
and the competition, the pressure of competition rather, has also come to a point where it becomes sort of, annoying?
Well, again, I just because of the films that I've done, I haven't really been in that conversation, personally. So I don't really know. And I think because I've kind of taken a different path, I haven't really been a part of that too much, in a
Okay.
sense. But I mean, I think if you're talking about the general thing of drawing comparisons, I think it's really
Yeah.
quite silly. I mean, how could you? Everybody has a unique skill set. Maybe somebody is better at certain roles. Maybe somebody is better at a certain kind of film.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of has their niche. And if you don't like them, then don't watch their films. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
something else that you can watch that you like. So I think the whole thing of comparisons is pretty silly. I think that we as a society and as a media should embrace people's individuality, as opposed to
Definitely.
trying to categorize everybody into one mold, because that's very limiting. Say for example, if you say Harsh is a young actor, so he should only do this kind of a film. You know what I'm trying to say? Then it's,
Yeah.
then you put me in a box, and I don't want to be in that box. I don't want to do films that people are expecting me to do. That's very boring, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't like to confine myself to any of those limitations, and I think comparisons are silly, and I think comparisons only really, like, they won't really ever stop. Like, I mean, you'll always kind of be compared to, I mean, people are still trying to compare the three Khans. So
Mhm.
it's something that is just a part of the culture, I guess.
Definitely. Yeah. Totally
Mm.
agreed. And of course, talking about the family that you belong to, of course, your dad has been a legendary actor. Do you ever feel pressurized with, the thing that says that you have to carry forward his legacy, and he has been this actor, so now you have to carry it ahead? Do you feel the pressure at any point?
I mean, the thing is, I sometimes think about, like, when my dad was doing Vosa Din, and all of I don't think he was thinking about all of this. You know what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say? Like, he was just kind of going with the flow and trying to work as hard as possible and bring his characters to life. And now he's gotten to where he has because of that.
Yeah.
So if I start thinking about, I've got this legacy, and, like, if I do this small role in AK versus AK, then what will people think? And it's just, it's so silly. Like,
Yeah.
life is all about having experiences. And I mean, AK versus AK is a great example. Yeah, I mean, it's such a small role that, has got such incredible reviews, and a lot of people
Exactly.
are very entertained and are talking about it. So the whole world has changed in the last 2 years, in the last
Yeah.
year after the pandemic. And this is a pandemic. It's a tectonic shift in the way that we live our lives. I mean, the vaccine is here and cases are down, and eventually we'll become more comfortable with it, and we'll be able to
Yeah.
go back to our lives and live our lives, which is kind of already happening. But there are certain habits and certain tastes and sensibilities that have been put in place. So I don't know what it takes in 2020 to be a superstar that for the next 30 years. I don't think anybody has the answer to that. you know
Yeah.
you know
Definitely.
you don't know what people are going to be watching in 2045. And when my father was doing Ram Lakhan and Beta in the late 80s and early 90s, I don't think he knew what it would
Mhm.
be like to be a star in 2020. Right?
Yeah.
So what's the answer? The answer from that analysis is to just keep doing good roles, man. Just keep, and don't think too much about your strategy, and placement of where you are and how people see you. So that's what I just want to kind of put my head down, be very sincere, focus, and do good films, and eventually one of them maybe will reach out to a wider audience.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Harsh, for
Yeah.
chatting with me. It was a pleasure
Thanks.
having you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck. Yeah. Bye bye.